Thanks for
Hey,
being on the channel with me.
hey, Brewbird. We're so happy to finally get a chance to meet a fellow Canadian that's been out and about and visited many other distilleries.
Yes, yes. But for today's interview, I'd like to focus on you actually and your journey. So I'll just ask you a couple of questions about like how you got started opening the distillery and what it's been like since COVID started.
Well, where do we get started? Well, growing up in Cape Breton Island, I built my first still when I was 13. So that was a few years ago. We came about after I retired from my last business. We came about decided that we want something to carry us into retirement. So once again, a distillery came to the forefront. We started playing around. I opened up a YouTube channel called Still in Canada, and I show the journey of learning, exploring, building, designing, and coming through fruition into opening our own distillery. We got our place in January of 2019, and we spent the whole year building the place, applying to the government, not realizing the paperwork in Canada is quite daunting. But we knew when we got the place, we would be anywhere from 6 months to 18 months before we could actually sell any product. And, we were quite aware of the fact there's no big surprises. We ended up at 13 months. So we opened up in February the 6th of 2020. For 2 weeks, we made booze. And then for 5 months, we made sanitizer.
Yeah, I heard. I think you were doing another video with someone, and you said you made a bunch of whiskey your first year, and then the police and the healthcare workers were knocking on your door asking for you to make sanitizer. Isn't that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they were actually those folks were driving up to our door, and the hospitals. We donated to the hospitals when before we opened. We had made 5 totes of whiskey, different kinds of whiskeys. There's a few versions we're doing, but we didn't have our barrels yet, so we were still waiting for a large shipment of barrels. And they didn't arrive when this COVID sanitizer need had hit. So I looked over and I'm going, oh, this is going to hurt. So 5,000 liters of whiskey went right to sanitizer. So we didn't catch up
Oh
again
my
until,
gosh.
yeah, we didn't catch up until the fall of this year and, or the fall of last year. And we're started barreling in October.
Okay. How many barrels do you have right now?
We're up to 10 right now, and we're going to continue on throughout the year as we time avails us. Once again, we're a very small distillery in comparison to some of the others. So, although we want to be known for whiskey, and we believe in all our testing, we have a great product coming up. Uh, it's going to be a hard sell without a couple hundred or a couple thousand barrels sitting behind you. So, we'll likely end up doing mostly cask strength single releases.
Okay. All right. And what kind of whiskey are you making?
Well, we have 3 versions right now. Right now, we're doing a bourbon style, which, of course, we're Canadian. We can't call it bourbon. So that is a corn heavy, and it's going to have a wheat and an oat. And then we're doing a Canadian whiskey style, which is primarily a barley with a corn and a rye. So, it gives it a really nice, crisp flavor. We're also barreling 100% rye at the moment. And come the fall, I'm building a malting machine, and then we'll be working on doing a Scottish style 100% barley. But we're going to use Ontario peat to smoke it.
Oh, wow. So do you do for the rye one? You said it's 100% rye. Do you do the mash as well there?
Oh, we do everything. Every grain that we bring into this place, we bring in our rear door. I use my truck. I go get the grains at the local feed mill. Everything comes within a 50-kilometer radius of the distillery. So I'll pick it up. When we do rye, I've got basically a 1-ton bag, and that's in the back of my truck. We forklift it out, bring it in, and we start the mash tun. We fill it with water, and we start it running. So we bring it up to our temp, and as soon as it's getting close to temp, then we've weighed out all the rye grain we're going to use for that run, and we're going to actually grind it right then and there. And then it goes right into the mash tun. So it is freshly ground. If you've ever had coffee that's been ground and sat for a long time, it does get stale. so do the grains. So the fresher we can make that, once again, grind it right in the mash tun.
Oh gosh. And how long does your 100% rye mash take? Because I know it gets very sticky and it's, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we use amylase, alpha and beta, and we actually don't have as big an issue as what you might suspect. So we're not grinding it to a cornmeal. We're just cracking it open, and it does thicken up. The amylase knocks that back down to a liquid. Basically, a rye mash will take us about 4 to 5 hours.
Okay. Yeah, that's not too bad. That's quite
Yep.
reasonable, actually. I'm surprised. Oh, right. So you said before that you built your first still when you were 13 years old?
Yep. Stole grandma's pressure cooker, added some copper to it, and that was it.
That was it. What? I don't know, like what inspired you to make a still at that age?
My cousins, they were already into it. So, it's just a young kid. You're emulating the older ones. And yeah, just fell into place.
Okay. Did you ever use it?
Well, yeah, of course.
Oh,
It's a different way of life and a different time in life. We're talking the early 70s. Life was a whole lot different there. And once again, if you hadn't been to Cape Breton, they call it the Maritimes for a reason. Mostly everybody's friendly and you get along. And in order to stay out of trouble, things like doing that in the back 40 were never really looked down upon. They were going, he's quiet, he's good.
that's quite a story. Anyways. Uh, okay. So then, because you also created your YouTube channel to document the process of starting your own distillery, although your channel isn't too active now, I don't think.
Yeah, that I was actually just before we came on. I was just finishing a new edition of the channel, and I've got about 5 episodes sitting in the laptop that I just haven't been able to get to. When COVID has been hard on us for time more than anything. When we opened up, I still had my main job. I'm still working 10-hour shifts, and I have an hour drive each way. So that's 12 hours a day spent working at my daytime gig. And then you have the distillery, and that's another 5 to 6 hours without even looking at the video. So it got to a point where something had to give. And when I was doing the straight sanitizer, I was actually sleeping here. I slept underneath the stills. There's many pictures of me just lying there crashed. I was doing 18-hour days just trying to keep up the sanitizer. At one point in time, we had 26 fermenters on the go, and it just wasn't enough. We were having such a hard time keeping up.
Hmm. But I want to ask, like, why did you start the YouTube channel? Like, how did you even get that idea?
With one of your previous guests. So, in when you decide, once again, I did it as a youngster. I hadn't done it from, that period of time in my life up until, fairly 5 years ago, I guess is when we started looking at it. So I hadn't done anything in that period of time. And I thought, okay, well, this is doable. And I started doing a lot of research, and not just for recipes, but for procedures. What type of system do I want? How do I want to do it? And what am I looking for? What do I enjoy drinking? So, once again, you open up your liquor cabinet, look at what's in there. And unfortunately, my liquor cabinet has one of everything. So it's we were kind of looking and going, well, we can't really go specialize in one thing. We've got everything. So as we're looking around, I'm on the forums. I'm seeing one fellow posting a lot, and that would be Jesse. So from Stillet. Now
Yes.
I'm following him through all the boards. I'm reading everything he's writing, and he's mentioning a YouTube channel, and I thought, oh, this would be kind of entertaining. So I started watching him as he started. And it wasn't long for that before I started emulating. So I've done a lot of instruction in my life, and I find it the fastest way for me to learn something is to teach it. So, the idea
Oh.
came that, let's start the YouTube channel. We'll start from the very beginning, my learning, my discovery, We've done a lot of courses with companies like Lallemand and that. So there's a lot of knowledge that I got fairly quickly, and I was able to pass that on. It allowed me to discover
Mhm.
what type of still I wanted to build because I built them all and tried them all. So, you're following Jesse, and I think the world of Jesse. We're friends. And there's times where I'm watching what he's doing, going, wow, I'm not doing it that way. So now I'm looking and going a little more critique to what he's doing. I go, what he's doing is not wrong, but I think I'd rather go this route and try
Mhm.
that. So, even if it's not something I'm agreeing with Jesse, I'm still learning from it. And then we came to George from Barley and Hops and Bearded and Board and, all those guys. It just became a group of learning. And, I thought, okay, let's just document my trip of discovery for all of it, right up to the day we opened. And I got to there, and if it wasn't for COVID, I would still be there. That's, I feel really bad, the people that have subscribed to me, that I've let them down, but I just don't have the available time. I am catching up now slowly, and I hope to get back on track within the next month.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they understand. Like, it's a lot of work to open your own distillery. And then now we have the pandemic and all this other stuff. It's a lot on your plate.
Yeah, that was the killer. I mean, uh, we did well in our first 2 weeks. We entered two competitions. We entered the U.S. Open Whiskey competition and the Canadian Spirit competition, the Artisan Spirits.
Mhm.
And so far in total, we have 7 awards, including top 5 distilleries in North America. So we're exceptionally proud of our products and what we've got out. And we're still growing. We're still, we're bringing our gins online the next couple of weeks. We've got some interesting flavors coming. Lisa is going to be working on absinthe, and we'll be going at that as well. So we've got some neat things coming.
And can you just kind of walk me through what it was like starting your distillery and what you had to go through?
Oh, it's if you're really good at just making stuff, that's not enough. You have to be a jack of all trades. To do this,
Yeah.
you are going to be the website content person. You're going to be
Oh, yeah.
doing videos. You're going to be doing, photo shoots of your product. You're going to be doing all your paperwork. You're going to be designing your own labels. So, I mean, that's a huge cost if you don't know how to do it. You also have to
Mhm.
learn how to build your own building, how to install everything. Because unless you come with a large, deep pockets, which will take forever to
Yeah.
reclaim, you have to know how to do things. So if the boiler breaks down, you better know how to fix it. It's that simple. We have a large laser sitting right behind me. I'm in the back room right now. You can see the stack to my boiler, and right in behind me here is the big laser. So we do a lot of etching, a lot of promotional items, and all that's right in house.
So you never hired like anyone to design your labels. That's all you?
Yeah, yeah. So I do all the labels, as well as we designed our stills. So we had them manufactured in Wenzhou, but it was all to our specifications. So we have some different changes on them that makes them work incredibly well.
Okay. Wow. That's
Because
very cool.
the one thing that when we were looking, a lot of the people are just filling up their fermenters, but when your mash is at 150 or 190 degrees, and we do that for gelatinizing the corn, and even though we use flake corn, you still have to aerate your product and you have to crash cool it before you do your yeast. So we designed our fermenters that once the liquid has sieved through the mash tun through a false bottom, it goes to the fermenters. Once all that's pulled out, now we start cycling the fermenters. The fermenters all have cooling jackets on them. So we go out the bottom, through the pump, back up the top, and it just goes in the circle. So now we're aerating as we're cooling, and our yeast get a very healthy start when we actually pitch it.
Oh, that's interesting. So you do this back and forth process when you transfer from the kettle into, oh no, sorry, the mash tun into the fermenter?
Right. So it goes from the mash tun through the pump into the fermenter. Once the fermenter is full and the mash tun's just about empty, then we
Yeah.
choke the mash tun down to almost nothing. And then we start cycling out the bottom of the fermenter through the pump and back in the top. This also pulls out of the mash tun. So this is how we get our grains so much drier than what most people would,
Mm.
because it's siphoning out the remaining liquid. And it aerates, it cools down, so it only takes about an hour and a half to go from 150 down to 80.
Hmm. So between the mash tun and the fermenter, do you have a heat exchanger? Is it
Nope.
getting cooled? Oh, okay. So you're relying on the cooling jackets on the fermenter to cool
Right.
the whole thing down.
Right, they're doing double duty. So we don't need to install a chiller in our lines when we can do it the way we do it.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Yeah. And I guess going from the bottom to the top will also make sure that there's no heat stratification. It's like well mixed.
That's it. It's constantly it's a 2-inch pump, so it's pulling a lot of liquid. As it's pouring in the top, it takes about a 3-foot drop to get to where the level is. That aerates, and yeah, it does amazingly well.
And how long does it take to cool the it down to the right temperature?
Yeah, about an hour and a half. So, by the time we move it out of the mash tun, it's sitting about 150 to 170 degrees. We move it over, and about an hour and a half later, it's cooled down to pitching temperature.
Okay. Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I've never heard of that system before, so that's interesting.
So that was one of the things that we did in our design. We could have went with the chiller and everything else, but we weren't fully sure if we were going to be doing a meal. And if you try and run a meal through a chiller, well, there's a source of being plugged and having nightmares. So we looked at what's the easiest way and the cheapest way to get it through our system and do a proper job. It's amazingly fast, and we're quite happy with it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So when did you said you started selling products February 2020? That's right?
February the 6th, 2020. Yep.
Okay. And then, of course, the pandemic started. So when did Ontario go into its first lockdown?
2 weeks after we opened.
Oh, that's such bad luck.
We're still in lockdown. Ontario, because of the third wave, they locked us down again. So our tasting room's closed. Our tours are closed. And, once again, it allows us to stock up on some of our other things, get our stock of Shine and vodka and all that up. And it allows us to play a little bit more. So, like I said, we're just getting into our gins. We're not using a neutral green for our gin. We are actually making all our own base. So we're going to use our vodka. And because it is a tri-grain mix, it imparts a really nice base.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. And how did you come up with your recipes? Because you have like an apple pie spirit, like a root beer spirit, and like Dracula's flower, a lot of crazy things.
You know what? It's your imagination is your only limiting factor. And I've got a really good imagination. Last fall, we had always planned, but we didn't know if we could do it. But last fall, at the last minute, we were able to make an advent calendar. So that's 24 different flavors. I refuse to have any repeat flavors in this calendar. And when we started, we actually lost the ability to make the calendar. And it didn't happen until a fellow walked through our door the last week of October, and he looked at us and he says, "Yeah, I can have the boxes ready." So then we had to order in all the 50 ml bottles and everything else. And, we're starting to frantically get all these calendars together. And the wife looks at me and says, "We're 6 flavors short." Okay, I said, "Leave it with me for a day." And the next day she came in, she had 11 flavors to choose from. And that's where some of the flavors like Fluffer Nutter and, Nutcracker and certain things like that.
But how do you come up with these flavors? Do you what's your process of making?
A lot of it is historical, either our own history or in just the world itself. Our gin, what we did for the advent calendar, we had a Geneva gin, and the recipe we found from that was actually from the 17th century. So it was a knockout gin. You have to love gin to like this one, but and we're right now we're working on London Dry as well. So and a rose gin. That's two of the ones we're working on now. Fluffernutter. Fluffernutter. We were sitting there going, okay, well, we got to fill the advent calendar. Both my wife and I used to, in the evening, instead of having chocolates or things like that around the house, we would toast some bread, put peanut butter and toasted marshmallow onto it. We'd call it a fluffernutter. We thought, yeah, we like that. That was a nice little treat. And yeah, we just spiked it and turned it into alcohol. Our apple pie, some of these don't come right off the bat. Like our vodka took almost a year to get the base recipe right. But our apple pie, we got through three different versions. Two I really just didn't appeal to me. One was too close to someone else's, which I definitely don't like. And what happened is we were at home, and my wife says, well, I'm going to make an apple pie. So she grabs my grandmother's recipe book. And I'm standing right beside him. We're looking at it and going, this is kind of interesting. So grandma's recipe, we just spiked it, and it's perfect.
Oh, I like that. That's a nice story.
Yeah.
Do you actually soak real apples in the spirit to
Actually,
make
yeah,
that?
there's two different types of apples, and then there's cider, and it's all locally. Wellesley cider as well as Martin's apples. That all comes into us, and we use mulling spices as well as apple pie spices, and it just creates the flavor that we get.
Okay, cool, cool. And before you started the distillery, did you go to visit a lot of other distilleries to learn from other people, or you just decided I'm going to do it?
Oh no, no, yeah, we visited an amazing amount of other distilleries. We actually even went down to Florida when I was looking for someone to manufacture our design. We contacted two companies, Carl, Verdone, and we were looking at them, and we'd sent them the design we wanted. And then we ended up having to go down to Florida to inspect another company that was overseas, and they shipped it to this one fellow. And we went down and looked at the quality, and the quality was just fantastic. So, we ended up going with that company and dealing with them. And we take the tours like everyone else. We do get quite often the chance to sit in the back room and discuss a few things. And from that, we learn. So I'm very much a sponge on information. So if I hear something and it's something I can relate to or something that I could use, it tends to stay in my head. And I'm not going to sit there and pump everybody for the recipes. Don't care about your recipes. Your processes are far more interesting to me. Recipes I can do in my head, so that's no big deal.
Okay, that's very cool. Let's see. Yeah.
So where are you working right now? I've been
Where am I working right now? I'm kind of doing some video editing and shooting some videos for a home brew equipment store right now. And then I've got a distilling exam in June.
okay.
And then I might have a job where I have to leave the country for a bit in June, but I don't know yet. It's
Yeah.
one of those weird things where people see my YouTube channel and then they reach out to me, but then I get quite suspicious. I'm like, who are you? Is this a scam? I don't know.
Yeah, there is some of that you have to be careful of, especially. You know what? I watched what you've done, and I thought, wow, what a crazy intelligent woman this is. To have created this, move from your food a bit, and sorry, I wasn't a big fan of the food bit.
I know.
Sorry, but when you got into the distilling and explaining, and you've been hired by these other companies too, well, they're going to benefit from it as well. They get their name out, they get some acknowledgement from what you've done. But for you to be able to learn and show the processes, especially for the home market, the home distillers or the home brewers, you've done some amazing things. In Shakespeare, especially the gin sheet you put up with all the botanicals, that was a godsend to a lot of people I've talked to, and I actually have it sitting on my desk here. How many grams do you use of this and that? So it's great.
Yeah, I was actually quite surprised by how well that video did and how popular it was, because in the UK they have a lot of gin distillery schools like that where people can just come in, make a bottle of gin.
Yeah.
That's very common. So I didn't expect it to be people to be like that affected by it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? That's another fascinating avenue that I saw that, and although you didn't do an episode on a gin class, you saw enough to realize that could be a highly entertaining approach to the customers. So we're looking at doing the small stills that's cheap enough, and having the space to do it, that's easy enough. That could be an engaging thing for someone who wanted to do a craft gin and learn. There's the shelf. We're actually going to steal some of the ideas for shelving some of our botanicals from what we've watched on your site. But it allows the people to choose, having the chart of what botanicals, the weights of the botanicals, and that sort of thing. You can get them to imagine. And if you've done the prep for them where they can actually smell and maybe even taste each individual grain, having lists like this, they can choose from. And these are readily available from your YouTube channel. And it's great. It's an incredible amount of information that for someone who's just starting is unbelievable to give them the leg up and know which direction to go. And it's also for distilleries when they see something like that going, I can do that. And my customers would love that. We don't have that over here as a rule. A lot of people do it like maybe a barrel or that sort of thing. But gin's a big market all around the world. So to do something like that might be an experience for a weekend.
Yeah, that'll be cool. So how did you start getting into distilling? Like, yeah, when did you start? What age were you? Like, it's 13, right?
Yeah, and back then it's you're at an age where alcohol is for effect. It's you're young, you're really stupid. Yeah, I did, and I didn't have knowledge. We don't have hydrometers. We don't have anything. Don't have a clue what specific gravity even means. So basically, you're stealing grandma's pressure cooker. You're throwing molasses and water into it, and you pitch some yeast. And the odd time you'll throw a vitamin into it. So, yeah, what I made at the beginning was we called it molasses shine because no way you could call it rum. And it was nasty. But it was still better than what my cousins were doing, so I was quite happy. When we came into it, when we decided about 5 years ago to actually approach this a little better, I was able to, become friends with a local distiller. So home distilling in Canada is illegal. And it is in the States as well, federally. Statewide, they have some allowances. I promised my wife that I wouldn't do anything illegal. And, the statute of limitations when I was 13, they're long gone. So I'm good there.
Okay.
So although I did all the mashing in my garage, I built the stills in my garage. I oftentimes would clean them in my garage. So my garage was all hooked up for it. But when I put the mash into the still, I was at my buddy's distillery. So I never.
You were at where, sorry?
At a friend of mine's distillery.
Oh, okay.
So that way I never broke the law. We did most of our cuts, most of our things there, and all the alcohol we made from those days were destroyed. It all went down. Yep. So once again, I did, once it's aired out and once I've tasted it and I see the profiles and see what I want, go back and start working on the still again, make something different. I went, my still was a line arm still. Then I went and I started creating a tower still, and I built my own bubble plates, and I show how all that's done. And then from there, I went and started doing pot still, and then thumper still, a double thumper still. So exploring all those avenues and things that we could do. Now, before we started this, and before everyone else got to see this, I took you on a tour of the distillery, and you saw Bob and Doug, which are our two stills. That was from experimenting because I can do some pretty neat things with those two. I can load a brandy in one, a grain in the other, and when they mix molecularly up in the columns, it's a completely different flavor than if I took the two liquids and mixed them. So I get some very unique flavors no one can touch me on, just from having the two stills. You saw that I had some mixing totes there. One's actually was hooked up to my condenser, and from my condenser, it pours right into that mixing tote. It's all stainless steel, a little motor on it, a whole bit. But those totes are also set up that down the road, we are going to try and do our rums in our whiskey tower. But down the road, if that's not good enough, then we can turn those two totes, those mobile totes, into double thumpers.
Hmm.
So we've
Yeah.
already planned for the future of that. Rum will be happening this summer, as long as the government stops smacking us down. We're good.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it's
I've never heard of a double thumper before.
yeah. So you've heard of a thumper, you know what
Yeah.
that is. So it goes out of the still into the bottom of a vessel, and it percolates through the liquids in there. So and you have some options there. You can put it just a back set. You can put a dunder if you want. Not my favorite cup of tea, but and you can put in you could do alcohol or even water. You can add flavorings to it so they get picked up as they go through. So you come out of the still into the bottom of the first thumper. It comes out the top, goes into the bottom of the next thumper, and then goes out into the condenser. So it allows you to do a lot of things. It cleans up the spirit. You can load different flavors in each thumper and let that do some certain things. So there's some neat things. The only problem is when you put a thumper in a system, your still is now a closed system. It's a closed loop. We're not overly concerned. If you're doing it at home, like if you're doing a small scale, there's some very big safety concerns with using thumpers, because a closed system can become a dangerous system. Our stills all have pressure and vacuum relief valves onto them, so we don't have the concerns that typically fall in with a thumper system. But I've seen videos where someone shuts off the heat to their still, and within 2 minutes, the whole still starts to implode. Yeah, if you don't make it atmospheric, it's gonna suck a still in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm curious because you have so much experience. Like you said, you designed airplanes,
Yes.
aircrafts.
Yep.
So what is your favorite design of still? Or like, why did you design your stills the way that you did?
Our flavor profile. I'm aiming for a specific profile for sure. I do like a Scottish style. I drink, I enjoy Scotch. So is my wife, although she is the more iodine PD, peat monster. Uh, Me, not so much. I do like the Highlands, the sherries. So we ended up with a wide body still, both of them, and we ended up with a helmet design that is typically seen in a Scottish style, on a spirit still. So that complements what we do. It works incredibly well for a bourbon style. Although once again we're Canadian, we can only call it whiskey. The rye's beautiful out of it. We're quite happy with that. And our still can run any amount of plates. So we've got the 4 plate tower. We can add that, or we can run straight pot still. We can run both the stills together, running the same product, or running two different products, or we can run each still individually. So, when we're doing stripping runs in the vodka, we load up one with a mash, and the other one is the storage of the spirit coming out. So we just keep cycling them until we get the first still filled with the the wash from the runoff from the stripping runs. Cut it to 40%. Run that still again. Now we're going to be running it through uh, 25 plates, and we've already run it through 4 plates. So basically, our vodka is almost 30 times distilled with theoretical plates, of course.
Oh, great. And what are your thoughts on the importance of copper in distilling?
Eh, Remember, I had said we took a course with Lulliman. Uh, Lulliman is a yeast company. They're one of the, in our opinion, one of the top brands, and the knowledge that they have is fantastic. And they share it with their distillers that are part of their group. And we learn a lot. We're on, we get quite a few updates. We've got their books, and we are questioning because there's a lot of people that say you don't need copper, and there's some videos going, yeah, you don't need copper, it's a waste. And then there's other people going that you have to have copper. So we know that copper removes the sulfates from the fermentation process. And while we were at the yeast course one time at Lulliman, they brought out samples, one which actually didn't scrub out any of the sulfates, and unbelievably horrible. You couldn't believe how fast you could pick up the sulfur in there. So although it's minuscule on a large run, it is there. And once you know what that tastes like, it's amazing how often you can pick it out.
So your stance is copper is very important.
The appropriate amount. You don't need an all copper still. You don't need all
Yeah.
copper towers. So the base of my still, the whole still itself up to the helmet is all stainless steel. The
Mhm.
copper is not going to do any good there, really. The helmet is copper. So the helmet is starting to do some of that. From the helmet to the whiskey tower is completely copper. So everything I do runs through that, it strips it out, and they get cleaned quite often. The vodka towers, they're all stainless steel, except inside. Inside is completely copper.
Mm.
And then we get to the condenser. The outside casing, the part that everybody sees, is all stainless steel. The tubes on the inside are copper. It's
Mhm.
doing a job. So
Yeah.
we calculated roughly the amount of copper that was going to be necessary. And then we put a third in extra so that we know that in every run, we successfully remove our sulfates.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for asking or answering that question, because I
Yeah,
know there's like so much debate around copper
right,
and
right.
whether it does anything.
Yeah, it definitely does something. You can see that the chemical analysis will show that. That's just simple science. So it does. Whether or not you can pick it out, and is it that important to you? That's a personal choice. For us, yeah, it was just too nasty. After getting that snoot full of it, we'll make sure that we never get that. And you know what? Even if you're for distilleries that have mostly a stainless steel system, they typically throw in a copper mesh. So you can do a few other things too. It's don't forget your condenser. My condenser was running too fast, so I wanted to slow it down a bit. So what I did is I took rolls of copper, rolled it all up, stuck it all up into the pipes inside the inside the condenser. It slows the vapor down, condenses it twice as good, and I still see sulfur getting on that copper. So I take them out after every run, rinse them out in citric acid, put them back in, and they're ready to go again.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard another distillery do the same thing. They just have a big copper mesh and then they stuff it up and then they take it back out after every run and clean
Yep,
it.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. So yeah, we're just once again my condenser is a shotgun style, so there's a bunch of 1 inch tubes inside the 12 inch casing. So yeah, I just roll it up and just stick it up inside the 1 inch tube. Works beautifully.
Hmm. Hmm. So do you have like Any advice for anyone who wants to make the leap from being a home distiller into a professional distiller?
Oh my God, follow in your footsteps.
Oh God.
You have done the most amazing thing to the amount of, and you can see it, it's visual. The amount that you have learned in the last year is visual, and you're in leaps and bounds of what you've done. You've taken an approach different than anyone I've ever seen, and you're an incredibly smart woman for it. You've done an amazing job. So, Brewbird, nah, smart bird.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. That's so nice.
But yeah,
Oh, God.
it's to get that type of experience, most people would have to go through a lot of schooling for. What you can do is find a distillery that is open. So it's going to be a smaller artisan distillery. Offer your services, typically for free, even if it's washing the floor. 90% of a distillery's job is cleaning. And, there's a never ending amount of cleaning. You learn while cleaning. And the distillers are going to talk to you. They're going to tell you what they're doing, what their process is. You're watching. And as long as you get everything nice and clean, they'll keep teaching you. So that's a great way to do it. And at the end of the day, after a month of cleaning the same fermenter over and over and over again, and watching the mash empty all over the floor and realizing just how sticky that's going to be, or in your case, how sticky molasses is going to be on the floor.
Okay. Oh,
It's what you learn from it will entice you or push you away from it. So, throw yourself into it. Know what you're getting into. To have that great tasting spirit at the very end, that creation that you have done, you've labored over. That's great, but that's only like a 0.5% of the whole job. So you've been there, you know it.
yeah, I do. I do. Oh God, I do. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, come back to the question. What's the best way? Follow your footsteps. You have done an amazing job in your approach and your availability. So, no one has the luxury, very few would have the luxury you do, to leave Canada, go to Scotland and work at a distillery and learn. That's only things that people can dream of. Uh, you're at an age and you're at an availability to do these things that few of us have that chance.
Yeah. I mean, when I tried emailing these distilleries, I really didn't think I would be able to get it. It was just a shot in the dark, and then someone actually was like, "Okay, come over." I
Yep.
was so shocked.
But you know what? What's good? Yeah, you have the personality that you will take that risk. You will endure, and it's what you send out 75 to 100 resumes to ask for, and if you get one call, you're successful. You've done well.
Yeah, because it only takes one at the end of the day. Even if two people offer you a job, you can only work at one of them.
Yep. And it's a lot of people, the younger generation, have an issue with hearing no. So when I grew up, and I see in what you're doing, is you're going to always get 100 no's to one yes. So
Yeah.
don't ever be afraid of a no. It's
Yeah.
if learn from it, move on, and just keep at it. We love no's.
Yeah, no, because even when I was sending those emails, when I got a rejection letter, I would actually be so happy that someone even, spared the time to write me a rejection letter, because a
Yeah.
lot of times they just won't say anything.
Yeah. So if you see, and typically they may say why or whatever, but if you see it, then you know that someone has been interested enough to care for your, emotion and give you a reply. So that's a great amount of information. And for the 50 that didn't reply to you, they weren't worth going to visit anyways.
Oh, yeah. And so this is the last question I have for you. If you could go back in time and you knew this pandemic was happening, would you have started the distillery when you did, or would you have waited?
Oh, you know what? That's really a hard one. We can never go back, so there's no sense kicking yourself for it. You just
Okay.
move forward and make the best of it. Uh, I probably would have continued along the path. It would have been nice to open up and get a year under our belt, especially because both the wife and I are the type of people that we have a large amount of empathy. We do a lot of charity work. So when it came time to those hospital screaming and everything else, we're not saying, well, you're going to pay this much per liter of sanitizer. No, we donated almost all of it. Now, we did have some on the counter for construction companies, this and that, and they came in. Yeah. And oftentimes, because we knew what our profit margin was, so the people who were in an industry that was still functioning, they came in and bought a sanitizer. We took the profit margin from that and turned it into a donation to a place that we wouldn't normally donate to because we were after the frontline workers. But the donation clothing store, the food bank, we donated to these people as well. So, and that came out of the profits of what the people bought. So, yeah, for the first little while, oh yeah, the money going out the door was phenomenal. It was left and right. And in a first year of business, that's not really a good business model to work from. But we were, once again, we were in a position, we knew what our funds were, that we could do it. We knew we were going to get hurt, we were going to get slapped silly, but as you hear Jesse say, I am such a muppet at times. But yeah, it was a muppet moment that we just went with. uh, we feel we didn't have any choice. We couldn't in good conscience not do what we did. So yeah, it would have been nice to have an extra year under our belt first. And we got caught off guard a couple of times. Whenever a job went out of my control, we didn't end up with the greatest of results. So like when our boiler got installed, the company that installed it never done one before, so we had to pay for them to learn. That drives me crazy. Now I can read a book and install something, but I had to pay them to go and learn how. So things like that just drive me around the bend. But they were out of my control. You can't install a boiler without a gas license, and that's a requirement. And I didn't have time to get a gas license. Yeah, it just wasn't happening. Same with an electrician. It's what we had planned. The guy was super nice, but we ended up going way overhead. And, some of that was my fault too in giving direction. Should have known better on that one.
Well, I mean, thank you so much for talking to me today, Mark.
Hey, Brewbird, I have been just impressed. I've watched your videos. I've seen your interview with Jesse from Stillet, and I'm sorry, it's from the gray side of life. You are still a young woman, and you have thoroughly been impressive with what you've done and how you've approached things, and the speed in which you learn and experiment it just does our heart good to watch.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope we can do this again sometime. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping at some point in time you will make it through Ontario, drop in for a visit. We are hoping at some point in time that Jesse and George are going to come up and visit with us. Well, there's no plans on it. There's no dates or anything else. But, we've talked enough that we'd like to all get together. So, yeah. And it'd be great to include you with something like that. Make it a nice little party.
Oh, yeah. No, I'd be interested in visiting Ontario again. I never got a chance to see Niagara Falls. I've only
Oh,
get
you're
when I was
kidding.
there. No.
So we're about 2 hours away from Niagara Falls. Uh, it's a local feature to us, so we're not always going down there. But what might interest you is when you come up, Niagara College, they have a distilling and a brewing
Oh,
course.
yes.
and they have their own little store there. So it's pretty neat to see some of the ideas they're coming up with too. So it's an impressive stop as well. And since you're down that area, there's a lot of neat things you can see.
Yeah,
Plus,
I'm looking forward to doing that when I can.
Yep, and all those Niagara wineries there. Yeah, that's a whole day event right there.
Yes. That'll be super interesting. Okay, well, thank you, and I'll see you soon, hopefully.
It's been a pleasure, Brewbird. Give me a shout whenever you need me.
Okay, bye.
Bye.